Hi everyone. I'm so sorry I can't make it to your meeting. It turned out something came up at the last minute and I couldn't resolve the contradictions, so unfortunately I've had to record this. When I discovered that Secret Historian was on the list for our group for this year, I jumped at the chance to introduce it because this is a book that has been of great interest to me for some years. I first worked on it when I was presenting at the annual conference of the Queer Caucus at Western, and I then later took the presentation to a conference in London, England, and it's always been a special book for me in certain ways. And I would like to talk about some of the ways in which I found it particularly moving for me personally. I wasn't moved because I felt that I would really like to spend a lot of time with Sam Steward. Fascinating though he is, he seems to have been an unpleasant guy in many ways, and certainly ethically questionable. Speaking as a university professor, I really can't condone some of the things that he did with his students. But there were certain things that moved me powerfully. One of them was his commitment to historical memory. I was fascinated by his powerful desire to sleep with Lord Alfred Douglas. Not because it was a pleasant experience, and not because Douglas was a pleasant person, or that the sex was any good, but it was a connection to Oscar Wilde. And clearly, Stewart had a very strong sense of history and sense of the past and a sense of heritage that he wanted to claim. And this is something that I find resonates with me. As somebody who came of age in the 1980s and imbibed the notion that gay life sort of sprang into being after Stonewall, I had always had this sort of feeling that gay men were an oddity that emerged at the end of the 20th century, and that the history before that was almost entirely a blank. And I was moved by Steward's commitment to the idea that we've been here before, we've always been here, and this desire to reach back into the past and claim a connection to that past is something that I found powerful and worth celebrating. The other reason why I found it fascinating is because I teach library cataloging, which means I teach people how to create bibliographic records that look like this. Okay, kind of things that now our records are a lot sexier than what you see here, but ultimately, when I'm teaching people how to catalog in libraries, I'm basically teaching them how to do the same things that you've seen in card catalogs, all your life. And this is the kind of bland metadata that I teach my students to create. So imagine my response when I read about the stud file, and when I read about people like the Reverend James H. Kane, a priest, Ami Dallin Miles, how he settles his problems I'll never know, Wild later, leather restraints, complete with dates, by now full S&M games, etc. The resemblance between what I teach my students to do and what this guy was doing was just too strong to ignore. And I was fascinated by the regularity, by the persistence with which he maintained the file, the consistency of his filing method, and the fact that he felt it necessary to catalog his sexual encounters in the way that I teach students to catalog books. was just too interesting for me to ignore. And I want to give you some sense of why I find this fascinating. As I tell my students, library cataloging has a certain theoretical basis. And the basis is that there exists out there something that we call the universe of knowledge. The universe of knowledge is the sum total of everything that has been read and thought and sung and danced and suggested and implied and kissed and fucked, everything. The universe of knowledge, it's out there, and it is the sum total of everything that we have exchanged with each other. Library catalogs deal with a very, very, very small subset of that universe of knowledge, which we call the bibliographic universe. And that is that section of the universe of knowledge that has been inscribed in some kind of durable format so that it can be revisited. The example that I use in my classics is often the cooking knowledge of my mother, who was a very, very good cook, and she wrote a number of recipes out for me when I left home, and the cards that she wrote these recipes on were basically variations of the same thing. Put chicken in pot, put in oven, cook till crispy and delicious, eat and enjoy. She was unable to express on those little cards the wealth of knowledge that she had acquired in terms of cooking. When she died, her cooking knowledge died with her. I can catalog those crazy cards till I'm blue in the face. I cannot catalog her knowledge. Now, what fascinated me about Sam Steward is that he had this fascinating desire to bring gay men into the bibliographic universe. Starting with collecting the pubic hair of Rudolph Valentino, there seemed to be this powerful urge to resist consigning us to the universe of knowledge, consigning us to, yes, we've been here, yes, we've had our experiences, but nobody knows about them, nobody's written about them, nobody's said anything about them, nobody has recorded them, and as a result, we have disappeared as if we've never been. Starting with that pubic hair, carrying on through his participation in the Kinsey Project, carrying on through his punctilious, dare I say, obsessive documentation of his sexual encounters in the stud file, and to his later career as Phil Andros, the author, and as the tattoo artist that he became. He was committed to bringing us into the bibliographic universe, to bring us into print, to bring us into pictures, to bring us into documents, to bring us into something that is inscribed, that is permanent, that cannot be avoided, cannot be ignored, cannot be washed away as something that may have happened but never happened. Okay. So this, I found, a very, very powerful expression of gay identity, and something that is well worth considering. It's well worth considering given the fact that Justin Spring experienced severe pushback in writing the biography from the library that was that contained Thornton Wilder's correspondence, and its resistance to acknowledging that Thornton Wilder had been Steward's lover at one point. Spring wanted that in the bibliographic universe. and the library was content to keep that in the universe of knowledge. And relevant when we consider the fact that so much of what we know about Steward is the result of a gay librarian who heroically rescued so many of his records from his decaying house after he died and reclaimed this stuff so that we could learn about it. I found that very, very moving, and I think that's why it's really worth reading this book, whether you liked it or not. And it's something that I think we should all think about. So have a wonderful discussion, and I hope all goes well. Thanks very much, folks.